If you ask NASCAR fans to name the craziest silly seasons of all time, one of the most common answers you'll hear is the 2005 to 2006 silly season. And for episode 7 of Weird NASCAR Rumors, I wanted to tackle this one. But when I sat down and started researching, I realized that there was so much here that I was going to have to break it up into multiple videos. The rumors about a replacement for Rusty Wallace, who was in his final season, and Mark Martin, who was supposedly in his, were so wild that they deserved their own videos. So let's kick off this mini series within a series with Weird NASCAR Rumors Special Edition, Replacing Rusty. So some of you may remember my video on the revelation that Jamie McMurray was offered the seat in the 2 car before Kurt Busch. But when I made that video, I hadn't realized just how wild the rumors were about who would be replacing Rusty Wallace. It's important to note, from the very beginning, McMurray was known to be the favorite choice of Rusty Wallace. But, given his contract situation, he was seen as someone who would be difficult, if not impossible, for Penske to get. That meant that Penske had to look at different drivers for the role. So let's start off with one of the first, and arguably the best name that was rumored to be headed to the 2 car, Kevin Harvick. Harvick's name got floated for the first time in February, and he quickly denied it, saying that he had heard the rumors but Penske had never reached out to him. But that was not the end of the Kevin Harvick rumors for 2005. There is plenty more to jump into in a later video, so stay tuned for that. Overall, I think this could have been really cool, and I think it's funny to think about Harvick being sponsored by Miller instead of by Budweiser and Busch. If Harvick had gone to Penske, then I think it would have been a solid fit, and keep in mind, Brad Keselowski won a championship in the 2 car in 2012, so I don't think Harvick contending for championships with Penske is out of the question. Overall, I think this would have been a really fun thing to see. Now, let's fast forward a couple of months, and suddenly we hear Greg Biffle's name. Biffle was in his 3rd full Cup Series season, and there had been rumors about him jumping ship from Roush to Gibbs the year before, at a time when he seemed unhappy at Roush. If you want to hear more about that, check out my Weird NASCAR Rumors 2004 video. Anyway, it appeared that whatever damage there had been between Biffle and Roush was fixed at that point, and the 2 sides were actively working toward a contract extension. So, Biffle denied these rumors. I think that Biffle to the 2 car would have been interesting, but I don't see him as being as great of a choice as Harvick. Still, he would have been a solid fit. The next set of rumors were actually quite strange, and showed some outside-of-the-box thinking on the part of Penske. A pair of interesting names surfaced at the same time, the first of which was Sam Hornish Jr., who was, at the time, a 2-time IndyCar champion. Yahoo Sports reported that he was a top candidate, but unless I'm missing something, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of meat to that story. But a couple of weeks after the Hornish to the 2 car rumors surfaced, an interesting twist to the story was presented. There was speculation that Penske was going to be scaling back his IndyCar program, and he was willing to use Hornish as a bargaining chip with his rival in both NASCAR and IndyCar, Chip Ganassi, to get Jamie McMurray. The idea was that Penske would basically trade Hornish for McMurray, allowing Hornish to go drive for Ganassi in the IRL, if Ganassi allowed McMurray to drive for Penske in NASCAR. We just saw the Justin Haley-Corey LaJoie trade play out this year, but I think this sort of parallel trade involving drivers in completely separate series would have been way more interesting than that. Oh, and that's not the only trade idea that was thrown around in 2005, but more on that in a later video. Hornish would eventually make the move to NASCAR full-time with Penske in 2008, driving the 77 car, and even though he would win a handful of Xfinity races in his career, he would never find anywhere near the success in NASCAR that he had in IndyCar. The more interesting name to appear was Paul Tracy, the 2003 CART champion, who had been expressing interest in making a move to NASCAR. One of the connections here was Matt Borland, who was at Penske serving as the crew chief for Ryan Newman and had previously worked with Tracy. Tracy had a reputation for being a very aggressive driver. In fact, when Borland was asked about Tracy moving to NASCAR, he said that he thought Tracy might be a bit too aggressive for NASCAR, but thought he could make the transition if he had the right attitude. By the end of June, there still was not a solid lead, and a new name got briefly floated: Casey Mears. The Mears family had strong connections with Penske by way of his uncle, four-time Indy 500 winner and Penske consultant Rick Mears. The Mears family supposedly met with Penske at Michigan to discuss the possibility, according to Sporting News, and the then 27-year-old Casey Mears was seen as the kind of young driver that sponsor Miller really wanted. While I actually really like Casey Mears, I don't think that he would have been the right fit. He had a respectable but not spectacular career that a prime seat like the 2-car really needs. He picked up his only career win during a 2-year stint at Hendrick Motorsports, and I don't think he would have fared much better at Penske. At the same time that Mears' name was surfacing, there was another name being thrown around, and this one is my favorite, and arguably the best fit in my opinion. But real quick before I get to that, if you're enjoying this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for all of the support. Okay, my favorite driver that got rumored was a young Martin Truex Jr. Truex was in the middle of his second consecutive championship season in the Busch Series, and running a part-time schedule for Dale Earnhardt Inc, with the expectation that he would be driving for DEI full-time in 2006. In spite of this, he still hadn't finalized a contract with DEI. Fox's Jeff Hammond said that Truex's name was one he kept hearing linked to the 2-car. Truex did not deny the Penske rumors, but did say that he was working on finalizing a new deal with DEI. Honestly, I think this would have been a great fit for Truex, and I think he would have had a much more successful first half of his career if he had gone to Penske. DEI was beginning to slide into a downward trajectory that it would never recover from, and Truex would end up being there through the entire fall until the merger with Chip Ganassi Racing. Truex has 34 Cup Series victories to his name, and only 2 of those victories came in the first 9 years of his 19-year full-time career. If he had started his Cup Series career with Penske instead of a slowly collapsing DEI, would he have had more than 34 wins? I really think so. The next name to get thrown out was another Roush driver, Matt Kenseth, who was rumored to be the top choice for the seat. This rumor was short-lived. It would have required Penske buying out Kenseth's contract with Roush, and Roush Racing president Jeff Smith responded, quote, "Absolutely not." And then, just 2 days later, it was confirmed that Kurt Busch had been signed to drive the 2-car. But if you thought that the signing of Kurt Busch was the end of the rumors about the Blue Deuce, then you thought wrong, because Busch was still under contract with Roush for 2006, and it was not clear that Roush would let him out of his contract early. So, what was going to happen if Penske needed to find a gap year driver for just one season? It would be a tricky situation because you couldn't just put someone in the car that had the possibility of being a long-term solution. So, who fit the bill as a stopgap driver? The first name that got mentioned was actually Rusty's younger brother, Kenny Wallace. The youngest of the Wallace brothers has always been well-liked and had a bit of a journeyman career. He wasn't a stranger to playing the role of long-term substitute, having filled in for an injured Steve Park in DEI's 1-car for 16 races just a few years earlier. These rumors were quickly denied by Penske officials, but the truth is that it was the second driver that was mentioned that I think was more interesting. That driver was Ricky Rudd, and if we're being honest, he was the perfect candidate for a stopgap driver. He was popular, a proven winner who was in the twilight of his career and without a home for 2006. After a few years in pretty mid-tier equipment with the Wood brothers, a 1-year stint in the 2-car could give him a competitive send-off to a Hall of Fame career. Apparently, there was an actual discussion between Penske and Rudd, as reported by Around the Track. And I genuinely wish that this had happened. Yes, Rudd took a year off in 2006 and came back for a one-year return with Yates in 2007. But I think that had he been given the 2 car for a year in 2006, he would have had one more good season where he challenged for a win or two and maybe a chase berth, and then had the ride off into the sunset that he deserved. So let's count them up. In the search to replace Rusty Wallace, there were no less than 11 drivers linked to the seat at one point or another, including 2 Hall of Famers in Matt Kenseth and Ricky Rudd, and at least 3 future Hall of Famers in Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex Jr., and Kurt Busch. Plus Greg Biffle, who I think should be a Hall of Famer, but I'm not 100% certain that he's a lock. Anyway, that's what I've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed. Next time, we'll be talking about all of the rumors that came from the search for Mark Martin's replacement in 2005. So until next time, thanks for watching and have a great day.